Happy President's Day. This is Jenniffer Jamison with Crosby Scholars, and we're here with a special recording of our 2:15 parent meeting. I want to introduce you to Rachel Reynolds, who's going to be our facilitator today. And Rachel, take it away.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. I'm Rachel Reynolds, Advising Outreach Specialist, and I just wanted to share some tips for sending off your student to college. The title today is Preparing for College, Essential Insights for Parents. There's so many different things we can cover, so we'll keep it brief, but we want to make sure you have, just some good, solid information before they take off. The table of contents, we're going to discuss FERPA and communication with your student, scheduling classes, housing with a little bit of brief comments on meal plans, roommates, extracurriculars, finances, and student advocacy. So, this ended up much bigger. Can you read it, Jennifer? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And what this really means is that your student has the right to privacy when they head off to college. There will be a lot of forms that they fill out during orientation or maybe, the first weeks of school. But students must give parents the right to access their financial information, grades, and medical records. The schools typically give the paperwork for the financial information and grades. The medical records, depending on what you want for your own family, we can share some of those that we have online for you, or you can have them drawn up by, a professional if that's what you're interested in too. Parents, please make sure that you have filled out the medical information so that if your child were to be hurt or injured on campus, you're able to access their records and you're able to see them. They can tell you which hospital they've been taken to. All that information is withheld if the paperwork is not signed ahead of time. And the other thing that you want to kind of discuss with your students before they head off to college is how your communication with them is going to look. And that kind of falls under the financial information and grades. Do you want to have access to their grades? Do you want to have access to their finances? That will be a personal conversation between you and your child. We just want to make sure that it's covered before they leave. How are you going to communicate once they're gone? Is it going to be via text? Do you want to talk to them on the phone? Is it going to be weekly? Do you want them to just check in every couple of days and tell you they're alive? Again, these are the kind of things to adjust before they leave, just so that there's not any kind of, issues once they're gone. Jennifer, do you want to share anything from your end on that?
Yeah, it's hard to have an 18-year-old, right? They're an adult, but they're not. But the law is on their side in this. And there are things they can keep from you and they might want to. But there are things that you should definitely do to make sure that you are listed as their emergency contact, that you're listed as their next of kin, that you are their ICE on their computer, and on their phone, which is, in case of emergency number. And I would look into the forms because doctors don't talk to you. You just, this is not to be scary. This is just to protect your child's information. But, if you call the financial aid department and you don't have that PIN with the permission to talk, even though you are paying the bills, they will not talk to you. So it's really important to go ahead and get that settled early on. And you don't want to pester your student in communication, but you sure as heck want to know they're alive. I know that, you can have them on Life 360 and be following them around. I don't know how healthy that is, but we all do it. But I would also set up a time. Hey, Sunday night at 5, give me a call, send me a text. Make sure that I know that you're doing okay. And I'm here anytime you need me, right? So that's all I would add.
So important to, because we're so used to having them home and you can just ask a question as they, run out the door to school or right before bed. But, their bedtime is going to change when they go off to college. Maybe they're not going to bed until midnight and obviously they don't want to talk to you at 9 p.m. Or again, just things to think about ahead of time to, make sure there aren't any issues or, hard feelings as they navigate this new space.
I will say one more thing, and this is for a personal lesson for myself. There were so many things that I wanted to make sure that I covered with my child when they did talk to me. I was like, okay, how are you doing in this class? Did you sign up for the dorm? Did you do this? That I had to sometimes say, Jennifer, just ask, how are you doing? Right? Like, let them start the conversation. It's safe to talk to mom. I'm not going to be pestered and nagged every time she's on the phone, right? Just kind of remind yourself it's okay to just be silent and let them talk. So anyway, there's a learning, some advice.
That's great information. I feel like you just reminded me of things I do frequently. So I will keep that in mind too. All right, next we're going to discuss class scheduling. Before your student takes off to college, go ahead and pull up the websites for the colleges that they are interested in, where they've been accepted, or if they've already decided and committed. A quick Google search will tell you what classes transfer between the AP and the IBs, and even the dual enrollment. You may have to, reach out to the community college or the high school counselor to confirm the dual enrollment classes, because those are not usually as transparent, but certainly the IB and AP classes, they tell you what class that will transfer as. So once you know what credits your student will have, then you can start the process of, their class registration. Probably the very first thing to keep in mind is making sure they check their emails. Class registration starts, and certainly in the big universities, it's quite busy, and it's, I don't want to say competitive because it's not the right word, but you do have to keep an eye on it so that you can get the classes that you want, and preferably when you want them. If you don't want to have all your classes stacked on one day, if you don't want a class at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So definitely make sure your student knows when their class registration is, and that once they pick their classes out, they have a plan B and a plan C, because typically they won't get everything they want the first round. They have special apps depending on which university they go to. Coursicle's a popular one that the students can download, and if a space becomes available, they can go ahead and pop on and register for that one and delete what they already have in the system. Again, that may not be what's available at your student's college, but there is usually an app for each college. And then the last thing to cover on class scheduling is making sure that your student knows what buildings each class are in, so that they have enough time, right? If they have an 8 o'clock and a 9 o'clock and they're, opposite ends of the campus, can they actually make it on time? They don't want to be late. They don't want to be stressed. And also, building in time to eat, making sure they don't have a 10, 11, and 12 and 1 o'clock class, and they have to go that long without eating if that's not something they usually do. So again, just to keep up with that campus map and the class location so that they can give themselves enough time.
Those are excellent tips. I cannot tell you how important that is. You will be late to class every day if it's on the other side of NC State, right? The other thing I suggest students doing, as far as the credits, typically the community colleges have an articulation agreement with all of the in-state public schools. But when you start attending a private school, that's when those dual enrollment classes might not translate the way that you think that they will. So definitely have that conversation. Registration at college can be as early as spring. So when Rachel says, make sure you know when you're applying, when your registration is. I mean, you can be in April or May if you've said yes to the school, going ahead and signing up for classes. This will be a little weird this year with the FAFSA and the award letters being late. So reading emails is going to be prime. The other thing that I was going to mention is sometimes your child might have to do something before they're able to register, watch a video, attend a class. online, read something to get a code to give them access. And time is of the essence. So you want to make sure you've done everything ahead of time before you go to register. And then the last thing is sometimes you will register during orientation. I don't know if we're going to talk about orientation. I can't remember, but if definitely attend orientation, and definitely if you can go earlier rather than later, because the later in the summer you attend, the less and less classes are available if that's when you are going to register.
All right. Next, we'll talk about housing, which is just as critical as that schedule we just discussed. When you do your tours and, when you have the admitted student stays, the question to ask is, is housing available for freshmen? Is it required for freshmen? And then what happens after your freshman year? A lot of the bigger universities we're seeing are definitely struggling with housing. We're just hearing across the board that there's not on-campus housing available after freshman year. If that's not an issue for your student, that's fine. It just means you have to make sure that you're aware of, where the apartments are, what the cost is, and definitely the cost, because on-campus housing might be one thing and that's what you budgeted, and then that's no longer available for your student after freshman year. And that number could change drastically. I mean, it just depends on, is the off-campus housing close enough for your student to walk? Are they going to have to get, on the bus, or they need a, vehicle now? So definitely make sure you ask as many questions as you can about the housing and what that may look like for your students. And then as they select that, decide what kind of room do they want? Do they want to be in the traditional hall style? That's very popular because it's a great way to meet more students. Or do they want the suite where, they can share a bathroom with just 2 or 4 students instead of 12 or 16? And again, sometimes you'll hear about students, in their mind, the cost of the college is one thing, but that's because they did the traditional hall housing, but then they really wanted a suite, and that might increase it by several $1,000s. So again, just make sure you're looking at all the different aspects of housing. And along that same line, meal plans. Some of the students, universities meal plans are required for freshmen. There's just no way around it. It is what it is. Others, they're not. You can pick the block or the so many meals a week. So it's really good to know what's available to your student and what the best fit is for them. Is it a student that doesn't eat breakfast so they can just get up and get going? Or, are they used to having breakfast every day and they've got to figure out where the dining hall is in comparison to where their dorm room is? Do they have, a 20-minute walk to get breakfast? Are the meals available after 8 p.m. if they're a late night eater? So again, these are just all, tips and things to kind of look for, keep an eye out, and have the conversation about.
And for this, a lot of schools will require, well, first off, they'll require freshmen to live on campus. And secondly, if you live on campus, you're required to have a meal plan. So if your student is not a big eater, or they prefer to do stuff in their dorms or whatever, make sure, cooking is allowed in their dorms, depending on the style. Is there a kitchen on the hall they can use? And then make sure you understand what transfers from fall to spring cost-wise. So if you haven't used all of your meal plan, I'm so sorry. If you haven't used all of your meal plan, what does that look like in carrying over? Can you spend your money in multiple ways? And is there a way to reload it? Because maybe you start low, see how your student is doing, and then have the ability to add to it if you find that they need more, as opposed to buying the top end of the meal plan and then actually losing money and you don't even realize it.
And jumping off from housing, roommates a new way to find your roommate compared to when I think a lot of us went to school. They can join social media platforms, Instagram. Most colleges now have an Instagram page for students to find, somebody they're interested in. They can go random. They can do a survey to, put their lifestyle habits and hobbies and things like that. what we really want our students to know and parents to know is how important it is that they're honest in their survey answers and when they're looking for their roommate. It's easy to, look at somebody's picture and go, wow, I think I would be friends with them, based on looks, or, they say they like to do this. But you really need to understand, is your student one that likes to go to bed early and get up early and they go to the gym? Or, does your student stay up until midnight and, they want to watch TV or play video games? All those things are fine. Whatever your students' habits are fine. They just need to be honest with themselves. Along that line, do they make their bed every day and they want their room tidy and it feels, better to have stuff in its place? Or do they not really care and they're fine with, stuff setting out for a couple of days? These are all perfectly normal habits, but they just need to really be honest with that so that whoever they get matched with is a good fit and they're not uncomfortable in their sleeping space and their living space.
What I would add to this is at the very beginning, your student will get on campus and the RAs, the residence hall directors will have meetings with them. They will get to know people. They will also encourage your student to create a contract. And you definitely want to be as honest as possible as to what you want and your expectations, because you're going to come up with an agreement. And I know a lot of kids, when they first get to college, they're like, oh, yeah, this is cute, no problem. But I got to tell you, when it's time to study for exams and you've been at the library and somebody comes in and shines a light in your face at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going to wish you had paid attention to that contract. You also want to understand what the cost for changing roommates. If I need to change, what is the process? What is the cost? Some schools will just put you together and they'll say, hey, nobody can change for the first 30 days. And then we'll talk about what the circumstance is. The only other call out that I had here, I think, was sometimes people will go to college with their best friend. You don't necessarily have to be your roommate's best friend. You just have to be respectful. And sometimes it's better if you don't live with your best friend, right? Because there might be habits and things that might cause some friction. And if you weren't living together, you would still have a best friend as opposed to being irritated with somebody that you really prefer to spend time with and confide in. So anyway, just a couple thoughts there.
Yes, I definitely want to echo that, your roommate doesn't have to be your best friend, and you don't have to turn into best friends just because you live with them on campus. I mean, you can get along and have similar habits and have completely different friend groups, and that's all fine. Again, you just want to make sure that your student is comfortable in their living and sleeping space for, optimal results when they're in college, and then they can, do what they want with their friends on their other time. All right. Extracurriculars. I just want to make sure that parents are aware of all the opportunities for their students to get involved on campus. Every college is different. They're going to have different, clubs and intramural sports and activities. Just there's so much to do. The students really need to make an effort to get involved and maybe even change, who they are in a great way, where maybe you wouldn't have done this sport on high school because you were embarrassed or shy, but you really wanted to try something. There's just a lot of opportunity for students to try new things, meet different people. Want to add in the fraternities and sororities. Those are a great way for students to meet people as well. Community service, if they didn't have access to that in your neighborhood or community, campuses always have things going on like that. And of course, part-time jobs, which may not even be for the money. It may, just another opportunity for them to meet new people and, see if they like something in that career or that field. So again, there's just endless opportunities for them to be involved and really create a new life for them with their, academics and their extracurriculars.
Yeah, Rachel, their extracurriculars is where they're going to find their people, right? They're gonna go to lunch with these folks. They're gonna spend their weekends with these folks. When you first get, sometimes at orientation, they will have like an extracurricular fair, And then sometimes it will be when the students first move in, like the first 2 days is just a big get to know campus and, try out different clubs and stuff like that. If you can't find something that you're interested in, I have heard students say that if you can get 5 other people that want to do, or Rachel, maybe you told me this, if you get 5 other people that want to do what you want to do, then create a club. I will tell you, there are sometimes opportunities for you before you go to orientation, like pre-orientation. I think UNC Asheville called it like Rendezvous, where you can go a week before everybody else moves in, and it's specialized either outdoors or the music scene or whatever. Those kinds of things are interesting and fun to be a part of. You get to learn and meet like 12 people before hundreds come to campus. I will call out fraternities and sororities. Do your homework on that. They are a selection process, and for students who, it takes a hit on your self-esteem, that does. So I'm not saying don't do it, because sororities and fraternities offer a lot of service opportunities. I'm just saying, watch your mindset, and are there other clubs and things that you can do? There's also extra cost associated with fraternities and sororities. So if fees are a thing, then let's find your people, without that. The thing I would say about jobs is, if you can find on-campus jobs, that is awesome. Some of you might, with work study, need to do that, and they will have jobs set aside for people with financial need. But I would much prefer getting a part-time job on campus, and then when it's time for Christmas, the campus is closed and you come home for Christmas, and you don't have to worry about working Black Friday after Thursday for Thanksgiving. And I want my babies to come home. I don't want them to be working at Walmart in Boone while, so I would suggest that. And then typically, make sure the grades are the job, right? Doing like all of the extracurricular stuff is fun, but the students should really understand that I am here to get my degree, and school comes first. So, okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
Of course, you can't, reiterate enough, the grades are what they're there for, and certainly, to explore their majors and all that kind of stuff. I think that, we talked about this at the last Zoom too, though. It's nice to have the extracurriculars, because this is the first time typically the students have so much free time. So it's great to manage, their grades, but also fill their, schedule up a little bit as well, because they're used to being in school all day and having things after school. So definitely a lot to keep up with in that avenue.
Yeah, I just beg, don't just stay in your dorm room all the time, right? Even if your extracurricular is going to the library to study, go out, see the sunshine.
Yeah, and see what's on campus, see what's around campus, for sure. All right, that brings us up to finances. And I kind of touched briefly on that for the housing, but make sure, parents, that you understand the award letter. A lot of times we've looked at them again just this past, Christmas with our game of college, and the numbers end up being vague. The way they put them in the line items, it's, is this unsubsidized, subsidized? Is this a scholarship? Is this a grant? Are we paying this back? Are we not paying this back? Is it good for 1 year? Is it good for 4 years? So again, really just, combing through that award letter and understanding what your student is responsible for, as well as you, and understanding, is it going to be paid back? Is there a GPA requirement for some of the scholarships if your students were awarded those? And then the things that continue, the housing costs, the meal plans. I do want to make sure that I touch on the health insurance. A lot of times, campuses and colleges will allow students to use their parents' health insurance. They just have to waive what's offered on campus. But you need to make sure that you're looking at that and filling out the paperwork to have that waived. It can cover the whole school year. Sometimes they, depending on who your insurance is, they make you waive it again for the spring semester after the fall one. And then along that same line is understanding what your health insurance covers on that campus. So if you happen to be out of state, does it cover campus health? Does your kid need to go to the urgent care? Where's the local emergency room? Again, just having all those discussions before your student leaves so that, if they get sick, you know what they can do quickly. Lastly, just, brief comment about books. Don't buy any books beforehand. That looks a lot different than it did in the past. Sometimes you can buy hard copy books and then resell them. Sometimes you can rent them. A lot of times stuff is online now. That doesn't mean it's free. It usually means that it's a very expensive code that your student can only use one time. But again, you can kind of look and see what's out there, but don't actually buy the books until the student's first week of class. And certainly, in case they start the class and it's not what they want to take, if they have to drop it or something. So keep that in mind for your budgeting and make sure you have a dollar amount in there, but don't actually purchase anything until they've gotten underway.
That is great advice. Like, get that syllabus and then go to the first day of class, because sometimes the syllabuses are out of date. They might be older. In some of the things, you can get the books from like right on campus. In other like supplies, there's sometimes, especially in art classes or studio classes, there's a long list of like things that you need to be able to do stuff in the classroom, and those can get really pricey. So finding other ways to purchase that stuff is helpful. Health insurance, make sure you waive that health insurance. And then the other thing is, parents, go ahead and request a copy of your insurance card for your student. They need to have one. If they don't have one in their wallet right now, go ahead and get a copy of your insurance in their wallet. I cannot tell you how important that is. It is very, very important.
And I'm glad you said that, because I know that my student does not have a copy of our health insurance because we just changed this last year. So I will do that right now. Good reminder. Thank you, Jennifer. All right. And then that brings us to student advocacy. Students need to know where to go for help, right? Depending on what they need help with, they need to know where to go. The first person they'll probably have contact with is their academic advisor when it comes to scheduling. Some students aren't given an advisor until after the first semester or after, school's underway. But typically there's someone when they schedule their classes, at orientation, that they can talk to about, what their classes are, what their schedule looks like, anything that they may be having, with a professor once school gets underway. So understanding, the relationship with your academic advisor, your residential advisor will help you with your housing and any roommate issues that arise. And then the director of student advocacy, they are kind of above the chain when you have issues that might be related to a professor or mental health or physical health. If you're sick and you have to, miss days on campus and the absence policy is, not to your advantage, and just really how to navigate those things that maybe your academic advisor or your RA, can't handle. So I'm going to let Jennifer share more though on just, other options for student advocacy.
Yeah, so getting to know the professors in the major that you plan on being on. Sometimes a lot of freshmen, they're not in their classes for their major. They're spending a lot of time in 101 classes. But typically getting a relationship with the department heads or somebody, an advisor within that department once you declare your major is definitely going to help. I also suggest when you're mapping out your classes, look at all the prerequisites. What do you need? Who do I talk to in the department to get off the wait list, right? The other thing is that if your student has an IEP or a 504 in high school, what I would make sure that when you selected your college, you understood what accommodations are or might not be available to your student on campus. And I highly suggest you going ahead and doing that research now, going to these schools. They usually have a website for the Office of Disabilities or difference learning, that kind of thing. You typically have to fill out some forms as well as provide whatever reporting documentation, similar usually to what you have from your high school, that says what your student's issue is and what accommodations they need, and then making sure your student actually uses those accommodations, right? So if your student is dyslexic and they have the ability to get like audio textbooks, if they go to the school store and they don't have an audio textbook, go to the Office of Disabilities, advocate for yourself, and you'd be surprised, within 30 minutes you'll probably have a version of that audio textbook. Also making sure, if you need more time on tests, sometimes you can go and take your test somewhere else to get you more time. Or professors don't give copies of their notes in general, but if that is an IEP or an accommodation that you have requested or need, it is advantageous to get it, right? To get the slides from the professors. So one thing is actually doing the paperwork to get the accommodations. A whole nother thing is having the student actually use them, right? I would suggest having your student practice self-advocacy in high school. Everything from learning how to communicate with my teacher when I have an issue, getting themselves up in the morning. I am looking right at you, mom and dad. Do you still wake up your child? and are they going to be able to wake themselves up? Same with medications. If your student is taking a medication for whatever reason, do they know how to set up a doctor's appointment, get a refill, especially can they get the refill on campus in health, or do they have to go to a Walgreens and like, there's so much to it. But if you practice while they're in high school and let them kind of come into the hurdles of, oh, who do I call? Oh, what is my code? Oh, how do I do this? Right. Just kind of teaching them while they're under your wing. So when they fly away, they know, I can advocate for myself. I am in control of my health. I'm in control of my mental being, and I know that there are people here to help me. So that's all I have to say on that.
I do want to add too that I watched a advocacy webinar just last week, and one of the things that the directors pointed out was making sure that your students do connect with their professors. Asking them for something in person versus sending an email. It's much harder to tell somebody no when you're face to face than it is sending an email. So, it's a great opportunity for, again, those students to, start talking to their teachers more in school now, so that when they get to school, when they get to college, and certainly, some of those classes, you may have 20 kids, you may have 300. So, making sure that they are comfortable speaking to their professors and asking questions, and, again, just how to navigate it and promote themselves, and, for a positive experience. All right, that wraps up our webinar today. Jennifer, I don't know. Go ahead and stop the share.
So, so thank you for joining us. I am going to put in a little plug on Tuesday, the 20th. Dominic Jones, our financial aid coordinator, and I are going to have a webinar on how to read award letters. So that is open to your student. They could go ahead and register for that. Parents are welcome. If you're interested, send me an email. We will probably try to record that one as well. So I might be sending it to all of the senior parents anyway. As always, please feel free to reach out to your student's advisor with Crosby Scholars, or any one of our staff members. We are here to help. We want to make sure that your student is successful going off to college. So I think our next parent webinar is March 15th, and we're going to be talking about what colleges are looking for. So if you're a senior parent, you probably don't need this, but if you're a junior parent, well, this might be helpful. All right. Thank you, Rachel. This has been great information.
Great, thank you.
All right. Have a great day.